Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube show, Ruben's History Show. Today I am going to talk about part 2 of Nero's rule, who was the Emperor of Rome from 54 AD all the way to 68 AD when he committed suicide. So I'm going to talk about his first 5 years in power, the time when he was the emperor, from the time 59 AD, when it was a turning point in his career as the emperor of Rome. The two reasons why it was a turning point in his career during his 13 years as emperor of Rome was because he staged a performance, and he also killed his mother. Those were the two turning points in Nero's time as emperor of Rome. So those were the two causes of his turning point in his time during his time as emperor. So before that, in 55 AD, he poisoned Britannicus. He had Britannicus poisoned and killed because that was the order that Nero given to the Romans. So that's why Britannicus died. But he was at the age of 13. Britannicus was killed on February 11th, 55 AD at the age of 13, and he was born on February 12th, 41 AD, the same year when Caligula was killed by the Romans at the time. So he had him killed during that time, but he was the son of Claudius at the time. So during Nero's rule, during the first 5 years of Nero's rule was kind of relaxed, like nobody was being killed during that time. But then in 59 AD, it was a turning point for Nero's career at the time, because he staged a performance for the first time, and he also killed his mother, Agrippina the Younger, who was his mother. And she was the daughter of Germanicus, who was one of the members of the Julio-Claudinian dynasty, and who was a prominent general of the Roman Empire, who campaigned in Germania, which is present-day Germany. So she was the daughter of Germanicus, Julius Caesar, that was his name, and she was the daughter of Agrippina the Elder, who was the daughter of Caligula, I believe. Daughter of Marcus Vespasius Agrippina, who was one of Augustus's generals during his time as emperor. When he was emperor, yeah. So he had his mother exiled. The Patrician guards had her exiled from Rome, and so she fled to Messina, which is a small island in Italy. But then it was the Roman Empire. So on March 23rd, 19 AD, she was executed at the age of 43 by her son Nero. So by the orders of Nero that Nero had given to the Romans. And so she was killed at the time. And so she was the empress, which means you were basically the queen of Rome at the time. She was the empress consort of the Roman Empire when she got married to Claudius in 49 AD. So she was killed by the Romans because Nero given the order to kill her. And so a year later in 60 AD, he also organized the Nerean performances, which had this gymnastics, and this musical and other sports stuff. And he organized it so people could play, so people could take part in that. But then he played in this performances, which he played as characters when he was the emperor. But then another huge turning point in the under the rule of Nero as the emperor of Rome was the Great Fire of Rome, which took place on July 18th and 19th of 64 AD, when Nero was emperor of Rome. So the fire took place in Circus Maximus, which is located in Italy, or it was the Roman Empire at the time. But it started a huge fire, and people were started being trapped in the city, and they couldn't get out during the fire. So it trapped a lot of people, and the people were trapped, so they couldn't leave the house or anything. So they were trapped at the time. So that was a huge fire in Rome, and then it was 6 days later the fire was put out, and the fire ended at the time. So Nero's response was that he thought that the Christians were responsible for the fire, and so he started killing a bunch of Christians, and he started burning them alive and doing all this other terrible stuff to the Christians. So he was one of the worst emperors, Nero, because he killed the Christians, because he thought that the Christians were responsible for the fire, because the Christians were causing problems for the Roman Empire. But he started killing all of them because he thought they were responsible for the fire, obviously. But there were some sources saying that the fire of Rome was an accident, and some people say it was a crime. But I believe it was an incident because a fire broke out. I don't believe it was a crime. I just believe it was a fire. It was not a crime. So it was just a fire that took place. But Nero started thinking it was the Christians, because Christians were causing problems throughout the city of Rome at the time. So he also killed the two followers of Christ, Jesus Christ, Peter and Paul, which were the followers of Christ, who was a Christian teacher and a religious leader, Christ. So they were both killed. Paul and Peter were killed at that time. And also, a year after the fire took place, there was a conspiracy against Nero. It was known as the Picocian conspiracy. That was basically to remove Nero from power. That was basically the plan, to remove Nero from power, which was known as the Pisonian conspiracy, which was planned by Gaius Calpurnius Piso in 65 AD, a year after the fire took place. So, but Nero discovered about the conspiracy, and he started arresting the conspirators who were trying to overthrow Nero from power, and so he had them executed. He had most of the conspirators killed, who tried to remove Nero from power, and also some of the conspirators attempted to commit suicide. Seneca the Younger, who was Nero's tutor, committed suicide at the time. He was the tutor of Nero. So Seneca was also a statesman. He was a Roman statesman and dramatist at the time. During the during the rule of Nero at that period. So most of the assassins were executed, or the conspirators were executed. Some were exiled and some were pardoned. They were forgiven for conspire for trying to remove Nero as emperor of Rome. But then a year after the conspiracy, it was the Olympics in Greece in 66 AD. So Nero traveled to Greece so he could take part in the Olympics. So, and also that was the first time he appeared in the first time, no, not the first time he appeared in public. The first time he appeared in public was in 51 AD when he was at the age of 14 years old. So he appeared in the Olympics that was staged in Greece, which was in 66 AD to 67 AD. So he stayed in Greece for almost a year at the time, and he took part in this chariot races, which basically meant you were riding the chariot and you had the horses attached to it. So he was riding on the horse, and I remember reading from a book that Nero, when he was on the chariot, his chariot broke and he hurted himself when the chariot broke apart. So, and then also I remember reading from the book as well, there was some support, there were some supplies that were supposed to go to Greece so the people of Greece could have food, but then the wind was pushing the ship back, and that prevented the ship from going to Greece and giving the people supplies of food. And also when Nero was in Greece, he also gave another performance singing, and he told the people that if you leave my performance when I'm singing, you will be killed. And so people stayed to listen to him sing. That's what he liked doing. That's what Nero loved doing. He loved playing music and singing music, and he loved performing on the stage when he was emperor of Rome, and even before he was emperor of Rome. So so in 68 AD, he was there. That was the time when this revolt took place in Germany. It was Vindex, who was the governor of a Gaulish territory. He revolted, and there was an army revolt that was going on in Gaul, and so the revolt was being supported by Galba, who was going to be the future emperor of Rome following the death of Nero. But Galba, he was the governor of Hispania, which is present-day Spain at the time. And so the revolt ended in failure, and so Vindex committed suicide, who was a governor of a Gaulish territory at the time. And so no, he was governor of a Gaulish governor, and he was killed. He committed suicide because the revolt failed. And so Nero fled back to Rome. When Nero fled back to Rome from Greece, and the military authorities chose Galba as the emperor of Rome, So on June 9th, 68 AD, Nero was, he was declared a public enemy of the Roman Empire, and so he went to go find everybody in his house. He went to go find everybody in his house, but then no one was in his house, and so he found a slave. This is what I remember listening to a lecture. So Nero was trying to look for someone, and then he found a slave, and then he told the slave to to stab himself, Nero. And the slave said, I'm not doing it. And Nero said, stab me. And the slave said, no. And then he grabbed the slave's hand and just stabbed him in the stomach, which brought an end to Nero's rule at the time. And also it brought an end to the Julian Claudinian dynasty, which was the dynasties of the Caesar's relatives, and that brought an end. And that was a dynasty from the time of Augustus all the way to the time of Nero, when Nero died. And then also started a civil war. It started a fight for power of who was going to be the new leader, the new emperor of Rome following Nero's death on June 9th, 68 AD. And Nero was at the age of 33 when he committed suicide. So no, he was 30. Nero was 30. The same age when Alexander the Great conquered Persia when he was 30. So Nero's rule was quite scary because a lot of Christians were being killed, and a lot of Roman people were being killed. The conspirators were being killed to overthrow Nero. And also during Nero's rule, there was a golden house which was built in Rome. It was Nero's palace, and the golden house also has a public bath, and it has a statue of Nero. And that's what's basically in the golden house. It was completed under Nero, I believe, the golden house, and that was his palace. And so after the death of Nero, it started a civil war, which was known as the Year of the Four Emperors. The Year of the Four Emperors, which was a civil war fought between these three Roman emperors to basically like a struggle for power of who was going to be the new emperor of Rome, led by Galba, Otho, and Vitellius. And that would last for about a year, that civil war for fight for power. And so after the death of Nero, it was Galba who didn't rule the Roman emperor for a long time, and he didn't rule the country for a long time. Didn't rule the Roman Empire for a long time. He just ruled it from June 9th, 68 AD to January 15th, 69 AD, when he was killed by the Romans. So yeah, I hope you learned something from this video, and I'm going to talk about the three emperors that died throughout the 12 months of 69 AD. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.